Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
шануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 494 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on another fundraiser night. And also, Enforcer, can you please screen share?
I didn't.
I don't think so. I don't see anything.
Oh no. Let me go do that real quick. All right, there we go. Now, Matthew can see
dear.
the. Oh my. Anyways,
There we go.
Moving on from that small technical comeuppance we just had before the stream that we didn't notice until right then. Welcome back, everyone. Of course, today is the Sunday fundraiser, and before we even get into the news, and before I tell y'all about today's news and everything else going on with it, I want to give a huge shout out to the nonprofit we're running tonight, and I hope that y'all blow this thing out of the water because it is an incredible nonprofit with an incredible mission. The fundraiser for tonight is for Revived Soldiers of Ukraine, an incredible nonprofit that helps to save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers that have been seriously wounded. They help out with paying for the medical bills of these soldiers to undergo life-saving surgery, and not only that, they also help them all the way through the rehabilitation process, where if for some reason they lose a leg or a limb, or in case if they are just severely wounded or suffer a traumatic brain injury, they help them through the entire process to recovery. It is an amazing nonprofit that helps out the brave soldiers that we cover on this news each and every day. And many of us have actually seen, even on this channel, in some videos, some Ukrainian soldiers receiving wounds. And those wounds are being received in the defense of their nation and in the defense of millions of people who sit behind that front line all the way from Donetsk and all the way to Lviv, almost to the very western side of the country. Those soldiers are giving their all to defend that nation, to defend the Western world from further Russian aggression, and through Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, we can repay them back in a small way to make sure that if they've sacrificed nearly everything, we're at least able to help them to get most of that back. And so I hope that y'all support Revive Soldiers of Ukraine tonight. I hope we blow it out of the park. We have a $5,000 goal tonight, and we have already reached and sadly, it still doesn't show it in the control room. It does show it on the live stream, though, so let me just go to my phone real quick and let me see where it's gotten to. It has gotten up to $1.1 thousand already. And so it's pretty on up there, and I hope that y'all do continue to help support the Revive Soldiers of Ukraine fundraiser, so that way we can help out as many people over there as we can. But I digress. It is now time for us to talk about the news and the stories of all of these brave soldiers that we're going to be helping out through the Revive Soldiers of Ukraine fundraiser. And we've been getting a lot of news side of Ukraine. We didn't get a lot of news, in fact, any news that came from Russia today or around the rest of the world.
Raggy. We got some hardcore lag coming in strong.
Of course, on the fundraiser night. Oh, it's flatlined. Man, now this is weather. This is completely weather right here. Ooh. Yeah, that thing flatlined.
Yeah, this is definitely weather related. I think we're back already.
I think we are. Yeah, I think we're back.
Oh my, maybe we can keep internet connection somewhat.
Oh my. This is not good at all.
Dang, a 400 from DCC Prime.
Holy
Nice.
moly! Holy smokes. Gee willikers. That is a lot. And I got to thank you for putting $400 into the fundraiser. And hopefully that rallies the troops. Because right now we are at, oh my lord.
Well, they're coming in strong now.
Wow, y'all are coming in strong tonight. We're already up at $1.9 thousand for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. And may even make it further than that. Anyways, I do want to make a quick apology real quick to everyone tonight. Of course, a storm is blowing through this area right now, as y'all can see at the bottom of my screen. It says 79 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain. And y'all know what that means. That means our internet is going to be a little wonky tonight. I do apologize in advance. I hope y'all do stick with us, because we'll continue to cover the news as normal, but we may have intermittent outages due to rain and inclement weather. But moving on from that, and on into the big news of the day, we're going to be starting off in our location unknowns, nonetheless, to start off tonight, because we had some pretty interesting ones and some pretty solemn ones. We're actually starting off the location unknowns with a pretty solemn clip. This is a clip of a university in Ukraine handing out diplomas to students who have graduated from university. One of these diplomas is about to be given out to a soldier who is serving in the Ukrainian army. And in between being able to graduate and when this graduation ceremony was held, he ended up dying on the front lines in Ukraine. And so his parents were the ones to receive the diploma for their son, who is now dead on the battlefield after defending their country. And so here's the clip. And the reason why I'm showing this clip first tonight, out of every clip we could have shown, is because these are the soldiers that aren't as fortunate as the soldiers that will be going through Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. The soldiers that go through Revived Soldiers of Ukraine nearly gave everything they had, nearly their lives, to defend Ukraine and the Western world. And everyone who's in this live chat right now, other soldiers, like the soldier here, who's not even alive to receive his diploma after he graduated from the National University of the Lviv Mortla Academy, he's no longer around to receive this diploma. And it's soldiers like him that may have given their lives or may have sacrificed their own lives to defend everyone in this live chat right now and to possibly make sure that their comrades just right next to them were able to just receive serious wounds and then end up in the hands of Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. But here's the clip.
Знака глибокої шани і вічної пам'яті.
This is actually the Kyiv Molkha Academy. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but you can see the mother there receiving the diploma along with the father, and it's something really to think about and reflect upon for a minute, and that's why we run these nonprofits that we are running right now every single Sunday. These people that we cover the news on, they're not just little actors on a stage that we watch on video and then we turn it off and everything's fine until the next stream runs. These are real people out there living real lives under the threat of gunfire and the threat from missile attacks each and every single day inside of Ukraine. And that's why we run these kinds of fundraisers, to try and help them out any way we can. And Revive Soldiers of Ukraine is helping out those soldiers that go through death as a daily part of their lives at this point. And I hope that once again, it inspires y'all to donate to the fundraiser and to help save as many lives as we possibly can as a channel tonight. The Lee Spring Army is truly amazing. It is an incredibly amazing group of people, and it's one of the only groups on YouTube that has raised over $1 million through fundraisers in support of Ukraine. And I hope that tonight we can once again continue to go well over $1 million, because we're already at around $1,041,000 raised total, and hopefully we can get on up to 1,046,000 or 1,051,000. Who knows? The sky is only the limit. Yeah,
but seriously though, we're making really good progress. We're getting a 200 from Snow White. Several have rolled in since the last time we spoke about it, but we're doing really good.
Hey, that's pretty good to hear. I gotta respect it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we saw the Ukrainians have made an AK contraption. This is an AK minigun. It is made up of AK-74s, bound together with duct tape, and then put onto a centrally rotating axis, and when you spin it around, it operates like a Gatling gun. Is it cool? Yes. Is it effective? Probably not, but it's still pretty neat to see, and I just thought it was really cool and showing a little bit of Ukrainian ingenuity. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next clip, where we also saw some Ukrainians with some ingenuity while having broken arms. Our fighters will find their use in everything. You go, you record a video, you tell the story, the excursion, turn the camera. That's it. So guys, we visited this beautiful forest. Thanks. Dude, honestly, that guy's got that bald and bankrupt kind of fit here with that little camera attached to his arm. Looks like he's about to go, look, guys, an old Soviet forest. Wow. That's a funny face with that. It's great to see that this guy is making lemonade out of lemons here, and he's figuring out how to just kid around with a broken arm. And hopefully he can get back into action here soon because, you know, he's just kind of doing his thing. He's just kind of vibing with the troops, but he's certainly not out there fighting on the front lines right now with a broken arm like that. But with that, we're going to be moving on to our next bit of location unknown news, where we also heard Budanov make a comment on how he survived his death. Many people have been wondering for quite a while now, how in the world did Budanov survive his death? It's very hard to usually evade death, or survive it at least, you know, it's kind of in the name death. But for some reason, Budanov has been able to avoid death at least 10 or 12 times, as far as we've been able to count. And someone asked him about this miraculous miracle, and he actually had an answer to that question. Tell us, how did you survive your death? I'm fine. Why do you think they are spreading this? Well, where you can find logic in the actions of an alcoholic.
Oh, jeez.
There is an expression, and in this case also drug addicts. What are we talking about? Man, I gotta be honest
what a
with you.
Chad.
Man, Budanov is spitting out the straight facts. And he's like, honestly, what can you believe from an alcoholic? And as you all know, the Russians have a actual national issue with being alcoholics, but still, I gotta say, guy's spitting straight facts right now, you know, and I gotta respect him for that, 100%. And so with that, we're gonna be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, where we saw that the Ukrainian soldier racked up a little bit of a score. Well, actually, the Ukrainian air defense racked up a little bit of a score. They were able to shoot down 8 Shahed drones, as well as 3 Caliber missiles on the 2nd of July, which is today, of this year. Quite a nice little kill count here. These calibers cost around $1.5 million a pop, and these things cost around $40,000 a pop, I believe. Actually, I think they're more like $4,000 a pop, if I'm correct. They're actually relatively cheap, but still great to see that they knocked out a massive amount of these things, and hopefully they can keep on racking these things up, because, you know, the more they rack up, the less the Russians are able to hit their targets, the less damage they're able to inflict on Ukrainian defenses, the less casualties are had within the Ukrainian civilian population, and the less of these the Russians have to continue on the attacks. It's so quite good for the Ukrainian air defenses, and hopefully they can keep this kind of stuff up. And it wasn't only the Ukrainian air defense that had a great day today, the Ukrainian army also had an impressive day as well. Observe.
Wow, what a nice day. 3 Bobcats. That's pretty clever. I gotta say, I'm spoiled from yesterday, but good numbers in pretty much every category.
Man, after yesterday, like the all-you-can-eat buffet that yesterday was, it's really hard to see a 3 and be like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Because they lost 11 of them yesterday, and they only lost 3 of them today. But, hey, that's still another 3 that they didn't destroy otherwise, and 3 is better than nothing. But anyways, moving on from that, y'all may be able to tell that the Russians have taken some incredibly considerable losses in practically every other category, especially in their frontline vehicles. We saw that they lost 790 troops. That is an entire battalion tactical group of the Russian army, cumulative across the entire front lines today, that was wiped out. That is a massive number. To put that into perspective, that would be an average day times 2 for the British in the Second World War. Over the entire time that the British fought the Second World War, from 1939 to 1945, they lost about 400 and I believe it was around 430 to 440 guys a day on average. Going off of this number, the Russians have lost twice that in a single day. So that's an incredibly high number, and showing that the Ukrainian defenses and the Ukrainian offensive is doing an incredibly good job in wiping out the Russian army as far as today goes. And those troops were joined by a healthy helping of other vehicles and equipment that would have gone to the grave with them. Another 20 armored personnel carriers were destroyed today. We've been able to kind of ascertain what APCs these are. And interestingly enough, it's a wide variety of them. I did a lot of research today to figure out, what in the world does the usual losses of armored personnel carriers look like for the Russians? Like, what kind of vehicles actually make that up? And interestingly enough, to go through the whole list, some of them are MTLBs, and many of y'all know these. These are the little ugly Soviet equivalent of an M113 armored personnel carrier. You can see one right here. Gotta be honest with y'all, this is one ugly mug. But this isn't the only APC that ended up being destroyed today. We also saw that there was most likely some BMP-1s that were destroyed. It appears that the BMP-2s and the BMP-3s that many of us would think as modern Russian armor have largely disappeared from the lines, and they are becoming incredibly rare to find. And so most of your APC losses in the BMP category are going to be these Soviet-era BMP-1s, first introduced into service in the 1960s. Moving on from that, another kind of APC that we heard possibly could have been lost today, we don't really see a lot of proof of these things around anymore, are these BRDM-2s. Interestingly enough, while they don't really look like it, when you really think about it, this is just a Russian truck with some armor on it.
It really is. It looks so basic and like simplistic, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is, honestly. But still, we think that there may be some of these things around out there that may have been destroyed today. It would be a little bit lesser in number, but before the war, these were actually a fairly common recon vehicle for really everyone in the Eastern European part of the world, in the Balkans, in former Yugoslavia, in the former Warsaw Pact countries, really anywhere. These things range in the hundreds to the thousands. They were very easy to produce. They have relatively no armor, and with a little 14.5 millimeter machine gun really being its only weapon, I mean, you know, you can't really go wrong with these things. There's just a million of them. So we think that some of these may have been lost. This is also, from what we can tell, possibly what the Russians are trying to use for recon, along with normal civilian cars like Ladas. And then the rest of the APCs that we would have possibly been seeing lost today are going to be very few and far in between, such as the BMP-2. As pictured here, there's a BMP-2. The BMP-2 is very similar to the BMP-1. The only difference is that this one has a 30mm 2A42 autocannon instead of the 73mm recoilless gun that a BMP would have. Also, the commander was moved from the hull into the turret. And so that's also a pretty big difference, as well as the crew layout inside the vehicle. And then, one of the rarest APCs that we've seen would be the BMP-3. The Russians only had a few hundred of these going into the war. A decent amount of them have been destroyed up to this point, and we saw one get destroyed yesterday, which does show that there are still a few of them out there, but we don't see these as much as we would have seen earlier in the war, and we especially don't see those reflected in the casualty report anymore. They're just so rare, it's really hard to kill one of these things. But moving on from that, they also lost 22 supply trucks, an impressive number. That's getting way on up there towards some of the higher numbers we've seen in the supply truck category. On top of that, an entire 10 main battle tanks was destroyed along the entirety of the front line from north to south over the past 24 hours. Once again, very impressive, as 10 main battle tanks is the exact amount that you would need to create a battalion tactical group's tank force. It's so amazing to see that another 10 of them have been knocked out, along with 26 artillery pieces, 12 drones, 5 MLRSs, and an anti-aircraft warfare system. All in all, an amazing day for the losses, and hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to keep this up. We're also hearing some murmurs and some rumors that we'll get to in a minute, and it's also in the thumbnail and title tonight, that we will be, of course, covering, but still massive news in the location unknowns, massive losses before that big news even comes around, which is kind of what this is all leading up to. But moving on from that and on into the area of Kharkiv, I thought I would show y'all a little phantom of something that happened a long time ago. Of course, many of y'all may remember that have been around for the entire war, that the Battle of Kharkiv was one of the largest battles of the war, and also one of the shortest-lived ones as well, where the Russians attempted to encircle and besiege the city of Kharkiv, which is the second largest city in Ukraine. That would, of course, fail, but many of the remnants of that battle still exist to this day in the landscapes surrounding Kharkiv, including the remains of this Su-34 fighter bomber that was shot down last year, and we can now see the very few remains of this Su-34 that exists. It appears that it may be a Mi-8 that is flying over the wreckage here. You can see another one in the background, and as they were flying over, they took a picture. To give you all an idea of what this aircraft looked like before it became the pile of rubble on the floor, this is what the Su-34 looks like. It is a dual-seater fighter bomber heavily based off of the Su-27. And it is a very interesting aircraft. It has a very interesting concept. And also, one thing that is very weird about this aircraft, is just a side fact, is that its idea is that this thing could actually stay in air for so long that there's actually a small crew toilet right there where the mouse cursor is. So that way the co-pilot or the pilot can get up and go back there and use the bathroom and then come back to the cockpit.
Is
Do
that the
these-
only fighter jet that has a toilet in it?
I think so. Well, it's not really a fighter jet, it's like a fighter bomber, but I think it is one of the only fighter bombers in the world that does have a toilet in it, which is a weird side note, but it is something that does have. And also, here's the cockpit. Well, actually, here's a better picture of the cockpit of an Su-34. Honestly, kind of looks like the cockpit of a Airbus a little bit. You know, the glass cockpit it has and everything.
It's actually somewhat modern looking. I thought it looked really outdated.
Yeah, I thought it would. And also, Matthew, is something wrong with your mic? Because your mic is sounding a little weird right now.
Shouldn't be. Maybe there's some lag or something going on.
I don't know, man. It sounds like either there's like a bubble in your throat or something. That's what it sounds like coming through on the mic. And I'm like, man, that sounds... Yeah, that sounds weird. I don't know what's up with that. But anyways, moving on from the Su-34, that's what it would have looked like, is this picture right here, or this picture right here. And this is what it looks like in the modern day. Just sitting there in the middle of the field, you can see the large tail section right here, and you can see the remains of the two jet engines and a little bit of the fuselage, but the wings have largely fallen apart at this point and no longer exist. And we can also see that it's petrol most likely added to this wonderful puddle that exists here in this field. But moving on from that little picture right there showing the remains of a battle long since past in that area, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Odessa for a minute. Many of y'all may know that the Ukrainian Navy practically doesn't exist. It's largely a river fleet at best and has very few coastal patrol vessels, or anything for that matter, to actually operate with. But something really cool that United 24 did today is that they made a special on their Navy and talked about their story and what they've been able to do so far in the war. And of course, their exploits have been massive. And so, without further ado, let me take y'all to this video that tells the story of Ukraine's Navy throughout the course of this war. And of course, it's that United 24 quality, so y'all know y'all are in for a treat. And so with that, here's the clip.
In the estimation of the sailors themselves, at the onset of the full-scale invasion, the Russian Navy was 12 times stronger than its Ukrainian counterpart. Nevertheless, the Ukrainian Navy achieved remarkable successes, sinking the Moskva, liberating the strategic Snake Island, and targeting Russian bases and airfields in occupied Crimea. And now the Ukrainian Marines are reclaiming their land. How did the Ukrainian Navy achieve such successful operations despite such a significant enemy advantage?
They thought there was no Ukrainian Navy. Within a week or two after the invasion, they reported to Putin that the Ukrainian Navy had been destroyed. Let them continue to think so, but they miscalculated.
Following the full-scale invasion, the Ukrainian Navy faced the task of defending a coastline stretching 2,700 kilometers, including 1,700 kilometers of maritime borders. However, Ukraine did not possess substantial naval force for this task. There were several patrol boats, including 3 Island-class boats provided to Ukraine by the United States a few years prior. Ukraine also possessed artillery boats, medium and small landing ships, and other vessels. The Russian fleet's objectives were to gain control over the Black and Azov Seas, seize the critical ports of Odessa and Mykolaiv, and land in southern Ukraine. But did they succeed? The day after the full-scale invasion, Ukrainians successfully repelled a Russian landing attempt near Kobleve in the Mykolaiv region. Following this, all potential landing areas were swiftly mined, and coastal artillery was carefully prepared. No further significant landing attempts were made. The Russian fleet's only achievement was the capture of the strategically important Snake Island. However, even this event became renowned for the heroism displayed by the Ukrainians and their defiant message to the 200-meter-long Moskva cruiser. Russian warship, go f*** yourself. Nevertheless, on June 30th, 2022, the Ukrainians reclaimed control of the island. And then the flagship of the Russian fleet did what everyone wanted. The Ukrainians destroyed the Moskva with 2 Neptune missiles developed in-house. This marked the first time in over a century that Russia lost the flagship of its fleet. But did the Ukrainians really prevail over Russia to such an extent? The success of the Ukrainian Navy was hardly predictable. They faced their first setback in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, where numerous Ukrainian ships and units were stationed. In contrast, the Black Sea Fleet was the most powerful in Russia. It comprised 6 submarines, 6 large surface ships, including a missile cruiser, 36 other vessels, including landing ships, as well as service crafts, aircraft, and marines. The Neptune strike on the Moskva and the delivery of American Harpoon anti-ship missiles forced Russian ships to keep their distance from the Ukrainian coast. Additionally, the world witnessed the first extensive use of surface drones, which likely inflicted damage on the Black Sea Fleet's new flagship, Admiral Makarov. This attack on a heavily defended military base in Sevastopol demonstrated that Russian ships cannot feel secure even within harbors. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, a total of 18 enemy ships and boats were destroyed. Consequently, Russia's once mighty fleet is now primarily focused on blocking trade in the Black Sea and launching daily missile attacks on peaceful Ukrainian cities from the sea. The significance of the Navy extends beyond the sea. The Marines were defending Mariupol, safeguarding Mykolaiv, and battling for Snake Island. Presently, they are making successful advances in eastern Ukraine. During the summer of 2023, it was the Marines who liberated the villages of Storozheve and Makarivka. Near Vuhledar, where the battle has persisted for over 13 months, Ukrainian forces emerged victorious against the elite 155th Marine Brigade of the Russian Army. Recognizing the effectiveness of Ukrainian soldiers, in May 2023, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the establishment of a separate Marine Corps. The Marines are versatile fighters capable of operating various military equipment, utilizing different types of weapons, and engaging in warfare on land, sea, and in the air. Achieving such versatility is attained through rigorous training. In addition to intense physical exercise, soldiers undergo psychological training to be fully prepared to the battlefield. Following the basic course, Marines undertake advanced training that includes practicing helicopter and aircraft landings, conducting attacks and defenses with equipment, reconnaissance operations, and more. The final exam is a special obstacle course by the end of which they must beat the instructors in hand-to-hand combat. The Marines, together with...
Man, they sitting here whipping out the trial by combat to show the Marines.
I'm telling you.
you climb
Man, I gotta
mountain.
say, you... Go ahead.
Dude, you climb that hill right there, and then the instructors go, "I'm gonna beat your ass." It's like, man, it's like I just got through all this to get beat by the drill instructor.
You got to get through the final boss battle to get through training.
Yeah.
But I got to say, U24 can make a video. Like, this is like the standard all really good videos should be made like. They have a extremely nice production quality.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, I don't think anyone beats it when it comes to United 24 with a video quality like this. But, of course, that was the story of the Ukrainian Navy and the Ukrainian Naval Infantry. Now the Marines. They are actually now transforming from the Naval Infantry into a separate branch, which will be the Ukrainian Marine Corps. So that is really cool to know that they're finally going to be independent from the Navy. Well, actually, it's a little bit of a misnomer because even in the United States Marine Corps is actually a department of the Navy. So it's a branch, but it's also an extension of the Navy as well, because that's historically what Marines are. They are infantry that go to sea with the Navy, and they always stay with the Navy. And so that's kind of their whole shtick. But anyways, amazing thing to see about Ukraine's Navy, and of course they have done an amazing job in this war, and have really gone beyond anyone's expectations. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from Odessa, and we're now going to be moving on into the Frontline news itself. But actually, before we get into that Frontline news, there's one more thing I must cover that is incredibly neat. And if you're a historian like me, you will find this very interesting. As the waters began to recede from the Dnipro Reservoir, or the Novokakovka Reservoir, there were many things that were found on its shores that had not been seen in decades, sometimes even centuries, such as coach guns that most likely were made in the 19th century, or the helmets or remains of German and Soviet soldiers. There have been loads of things that have been found within the Novokakovka Reservoir after the dam was destroyed. And in the area just south of the city of Zaporizhia, the waters uncovered something today that was truly unbelievable. A 1,000-year-old canoe, almost perfectly preserved, has been unearthed after the waters have receded, and we're now starting to get some really good looks. Of course, there's the coach gun again, another picture.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat, isn't it? And it looks like it's in fairly good shape, actually.
Oh, somewhat, maybe.
Well,
It's got a little rust on it.
For being underwater for nearly 170 years, it's not that bad.
That's true.
And then in the next picture, we can see, I'm not really sure what this is. But anyways, moving on from that, we can also see a little cross that's been recovered from the water. We don't know when that's from. We can see a German helmet. Interestingly enough, a lot of these helmets are being found with the user still inside. The best way to put it. Oh yeah, well there was the user right there.
Oh dear.
But anyways, that is everything that's being found. But probably the most interesting thing that is being found is a canoe that can trace its history back to the times of the Kievan Rus, which is the proto-Slavic culture that existed before Slavs even really existed as a cultural group, and before the Russians ever even existed as an entity whatsoever. The Russians would actually form out of the Kievan Rus in around the 14th century. So really cool to see something like this. I'm sure it'll make its way to a museum, and while the Novokakovka Reservoir rupture is a tragedy, at the same time, there is a little bit of a silver lining coming out of this thing, which is the finding of old historical relics that otherwise would have never been found if the reservoir hadn't been emptied. So, you know, of course, a tragedy, but a little bit of a silver lining and a little bit of a bright side to it is that historical remnants of Ukrainian culture are being found that span over hundreds, if not over 1,000 years at this point. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that neat little bit of news coming out of the draining of the Novokakovka Reservoir, and we're now about to start moving into the news along the rest of the Dnipro River, actually, to make sure we kind of keep on the topic of the Dnipro River here for a moment. But before we get into that, and I'm saying that a lot right now, we have to get into some of the leading polls and questions of the night. There have been so many of y'all that have answered these, and I want to hear what y'all are thinking and what y'all are saying about them. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we do have many polls to address, really good questions and a lot of answers to those polls. But first, I want to call out our fundraiser. We're currently sitting at $3.5 thousand of the $5,000 goal. So I'm not good at math, but we're $1.5 thousand away from reaching our goal. So we're getting super close. And also, Enforcer, we do have quite a few top donors of the night. Would you like to go ahead and call those off?
Yes, call them out.
All right, so calling them out. The first one goes to DCC Prime 1, who puts in the biggest one of the night thus far, which is a $400 donation. And big shout out to DCC Prime for that generosity. We also have a $200 from Snow White, as well as a $100 from BC Skyman, Jay Byrne, some guy called the Enforcer, as always. We also have one from Mr. Milla Rayner, I believe it said. We also have one from Artresh. I think I'm butchering these names badly. We also have one from Malachite. We have one from Trista One once again. We have a 100 from Hal Rose, Activista, and then we have several 50s. The first one is from James K. Then we have one from Enforcer for President, Marion Diemert, Stefan, M288, Stuart Perritt, Shirley 145, Axel K, and Fred Von Hess. And I'm just looking through the live chat here to see if I missed any. It looks like we've got them all. So big thanks to all of you who donated even small or large amounts for helping us to get up to 3.5 thousand. We still have a little ways to go, but we're getting there fast. Yeah!
And I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for helping this fundraiser to get to $3.5 thousand so far. And of course, real quick, I have to do this to get us over the top tonight. General order is now in effect. General order number 21, I believe, is the number that we're on right now, is now in effect. If you have $5 to give to this fundraiser, give it to the fundraiser, so that way we can get on over the $5,000 goal and help out Revive Soldiers with another $5,000 to help save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers who have nearly given everything in the defense of their country. I'm, of course, going to throw in a 20, because I always make sure to lead from the front. So not just a 5, it'll be a whole 20. But let's get this thing on over $5,000, so that way we can help out as many people as we can through Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. And so, hopefully that general order blows this thing out of the water here in a minute. And while it is...
Man, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. But with that...
Oh, it's starting.
Oh,
goodness,
it's
going
beginning.
fast.
But with that, let's get on into our poll prompts while we watch the general order come flowing on in.
All right, so jumping into our first poll of the night, it says 100 plus Rosatom workers have left the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, and they say evacuation is by July 5th. And what are your thoughts? 80% said not good, something bad is going on. 9% said unsure. 4% said it's bad, but not horrible, after the words that fell off the Chernobyl miniseries. And 7% said it's fine, Russia is backing out. And to me, this is very concerning. The power plant only has, I believe, around 1,100 workers, which is a mix of Rosatom as well as Ukrainian nuclear power plant workers as well. And it looks like 100 plus of the Rosatom workers have left, and many more are also going to leave by July 5th. very concerning, and there's really no real reason they're leaving. So it makes me believe that something nefarious might be coming. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's certainly not making it seem as though innocent stuff is happening at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It is looking like an incredibly serious situation at the moment, especially since Russian officials and nuclear power plant workers are being told to leave the area, and from what we can tell, they are leaving the area in mass. And so I would say it does appear to be a pretty serious situation down there based off of what we're hearing. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And man, we are climbing up toward goal fast. We're at $4,229 of the goal. So we are getting super close. Less than 800 away. So big thanks to everyone. And moving on to our next poll, it says German Chancellor Scholz. He says that seizing Russian frozen assets is terribly difficult and unclear. And what are your thoughts? 65% said it's not difficult, get it done. 19% said it is difficult, many legal problems. 8% said see both sides to this issue, and 8% said unsure. And I did cover this earlier today in our short war summary video this morning, and I saw this was somewhat of a contentious topic, and I didn't think it was, but apparently it is. To me, I would say that the due process issue, which is mainly what many people are citing as an issue to seizing and liquidating Russian assets, to me, can be ignored in this one instance alone, because Russia is not playing by the rules, so why should we? Only in this one instance, though. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's very simple. You see the Russian yacht in the harbor and you seize it. It's quite simple,
yes.
actually. So that would be the way I go about it. And considering that the Russians are violating multiple international laws, I don't really think anyone would deride a nation if they were to bend an international law a little bit and begin seizing Russian assets, Russian state assets, or personal assets of Russian government officials that remain within their borders. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And by the way, I just want to let y'all know, we are at $4,500. We are only about $500 away from the $5,000 goal. And so, we'll be sitting here, and we'll be waiting. And it looks like the general order is still going, and hopefully it continues to get us on up to... Oh, there we go!
Oh,
we just did it!
Somebody
Let's go!
Damn!
Oh, man!
Jaga, let's go!
Man, we did it! We did it! We reached $5,100 so far in support of Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. And I gotta thank every single one of y'all so much once again for helping out this fundraiser and making it possible. Ever since this channel began a long time ago, we have always run fundraisers every single Sunday in support of soldiers and citizens in Ukraine for humanitarian nonprofits. And I gotta thank y'all all so much once again for getting this thing on up there to $5,000. That saves loads of lives that will be going through Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and I'm sure if they could thank each and every one of y'all, they certainly would. And so thank you so much once again to the entirety of the Lee Spring Army for doing everything y'all have done tonight, again, to get this fundraiser to where it is, because you folks are what make these fundraisers possible, and then you folks are what makes it possible for some Ukrainian kids, some Ukrainian soldiers, and people who have ended up having a stroke of bad luck in Ukraine to survive another day. And so with that, thank you all so much once again as they continue to roll in. We're all the way up to 5.4 now. And so with that, we are now going to get back into the polls.
All right, and also welcome back, Sibes. He is in the live chat tonight. It's good to see you once again. And real quick, before we move on to our last poll of this first question segment, I want to call out a few more top donors. We have a 100 from Hal Rose, a 100 from Melanie Larson, as well as a 50 from BC Skyman, Ryan Whitehouse, Rick H, and Zach G. And once again, thank you all very much for helping to get us up to now 5.4 thousand. We are $400 above goal now.
And I gotta say, it is truly amazing. And thank you to all of y'all that we are able to call out and not able to call out. Because once again, y'all make this thing possible and help it to be, help make it possible to save lives over there through these nonprofits. And I'm sure the nonprofits are greatly appreciative. I'm certain that the people whose lives are going to be saved through the support are greatly appreciative. And we're also appreciative as well that so many of y'all care about Ukraine, that y'all continue to help out these fundraisers for so long. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are back into the polls.
All right, and our last poll says Zelensky alleges that Russia wants to attack the nuclear plant to, quote-unquote, freeze the conflict/war, and what are your thoughts? 70% said no, the war would get hotter. 15% said that would freeze the conflict. 7% said it might freeze it, and 7% said unsure. And to me, that would definitely not freeze the conflict, meaning basically everyone comes to a stalemate. I think that would make the war extremely hot and perhaps invoke a NATO response, because that might affect NATO countries if that radiation floats into our territory. So that would not do that objective whatsoever, and I would have to disagree with Zelensky on that. If that happened, it would be a completely different response, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. The response from the West would be incredibly severe in that case. And that would actually be an escalatory action in the war because of that, rather than a freezing action. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And now it is time for us to get to some live chat questions. And Matthew, what do we got for live chat questions?
All right, and while we go through a little bit of lag there, can you still hear me?
I still can.
Good, good. That weather is really wreaking havoc on the Wi-Fi. But anyways, moving on to our first one of the night, it is the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Mark Hodges, C-Fay, Cliff Simonson, Earl Banu, and Paul Schultz. They said tonight's Morse code message says, Russia better be ready for the 4th of July smackdown, glory to Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. He also hit the jackpot and got that Morse code message correct. Hopefully they are ready for the 4th of July smackdown. And so with that, thank you all for deciphering that Morse code message. Y'all wowed the entirety of the LSA with y'all's Morse code reading skills, because not a lot of people have those kinds of skills. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second one goes to Mando, who says, hey guys, it's admirable how you both keep this up, and my question is, do you think there could be another uprising in Russia, or after Wagner's disappointment, has that ship sailed?
I think the ship has sailed for a short while here, maybe for the next half year, most likely, because the purge is beginning in the Russian government, and of course, a coup cannot happen from the rank-and-file citizenry. In any country, that would be impossible. Of course, they could cause a lot of unrest, and there could be a lot of riots coming from the rank-and-file citizenry, but it is very rare for them to be able to do anything without any backing from inside the government. For example, in France even, it was seen that the rank-and-file citizenry during the leading up to the French Revolution, were able to cause some unrest and were able to get concessions in the government, but they were only able to make real progress in overthrowing the existing government after they began to become a serious part of the governmental process, and once they started to get the military on their side. And then that's when we saw massive government change occur. And similar would happen inside of Russia. Wagner was really the only vehicle at the moment that a governmental change could happen with. And seeing that they gave up within a day, we'll probably not see anything like that happening here soon. So I would say maybe another half year, and then we may see stuff flaring up like that again, or the Russians may have learned to try and keep everything within the family, aka within the central government, so that way nothing serious really happens in that regard. Now, another thing I would like to address real quick before we get on to the next question is I've seen some people in the live chat calling for the fundraiser to be raised from $5,000 to $7,500. Usually I would oblige such requests, and we would up it to $7,500. But to be entirely honest with y'all, we have been seeing over the past few weeks of fundraisers that the amounts fundraised have actually been dropping a little bit here and there. And of course, some of y'all may know that there have been some lies told about us out there, and I'm not sure if that's actually having an effect on how many people fundraise or what, but we are starting to see that a little bit more and more. And so I would raise the goal, but considering that we have just passed the fundraiser goal, and I don't know if we'll be able to pass another one, we aren't going to raise it tonight, because I do not want to break the streak of the Lee Spring Army always being able to reach every single goal. The Lee Spring Army up to this point has never failed at reaching a fundraiser goal, and once again, it hasn't failed tonight. But I don't want to get a little too out there and too bold and then raise it to a point that the Lee Spring Army may not be able to reach. But I gotta still thank y'all all so much so far for fundraising tonight to this fundraiser and getting it up to 5.6 thousand, because it's amazing to think even still we are able to raise $5.6 thousand. It helps out people over there massively, and I've got to thank you so much once again to all of y'all who have supported it tonight. Because without y'all's support to this fundraiser, it wouldn't have been possible. And so, let's see. And I'm seeing some people, saying things about that. I'm not going to make much comments on it. We've decided to just move on from it. But that is something we're seeing. And considering that so many of y'all were talking about that, that's something I thought I would bring up, is that it does look like we are being affected by what this person has said, which is markedly untrue. But, you know, nonetheless, it is what it is, and we have to work with that at this point.
And real quick, I just want to point something out in the live chat. I saw someone say, it was actually Jay Salem, said, "Let's get personal. You two seem to go far back, and how'd you first meet?" Oh, we go way far back.
Oh, we go way
me
far
and the
back.
Enforcer. We go way far back. We're actually brothers, believe it or not.
Oh man, well, dang it, man! I was gonna really
Now,
play it
ruined your
up.
punchline.
Yeah, I was about to say. Actually, I think I was in the same. You were in the hospital when I was born. We go that far back. I was gonna say something like that, and then say we were brothers. But well, he put it out there. We are brothers. We are 18 months apart. So Matthew's actually the older brother. I'm the younger brother. But
I'm the eldest one.
He's the eldest. That's a joke inside our family. Now, that's a joke I can't explain, but he's the eldest. But with that, I hope that does address why we're not going to be raising the fundraiser goal. Well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last live chat question of this first question segment goes to Gabriel Mum, who says the Merkava tanks Israel was rumored to sell. How useful would those be for Ukraine if Ukraine could buy them?
The Merkava tank is actually a really interesting one. And we'll pull up the Merkava Mark IV. We'll assume it's the most advanced version of the Merkava. And so this is the Merkava main battle tank right here. That's what it looks like from the front. Now, this has got to be one of the most bizarre main battle tanks that has ever been seen. Its design is very unconventional or unorthodox compared to most European or North American tank designs. The reason being that the turret is abnormally large and also quite angular in its shape. The front of the turret has some very, very strong slope angles on it. And also, one thing that is really weird about this tank is that instead of the engine being in the rear of the tank, like you would see on an M1 Abrams, a Leopard 2, a T-72, a T-80, or any tanks like that, the engine in the Merkava is actually in the front part of the tank right here. And that is something that you don't see on any other modern main battle tank design. The engine is always in the rear of the tank, not the front. And this was a little bit of interesting thinking by Israeli tank engineers, that they had the idea that the tank's engine could actually serve as a part of the frontal armor itself. And so that's the premise behind it, is that if the tank is hit by a frontal shot to this front glacis, or the front upper or lower glacis, the engine will absorb most of that shell's power, because the engine itself is a massive hunk of steel. So it's a really cool design premise, but to be quite honest, I'm not really sure if an Israeli Merkava is designed to the environmental demands of Ukraine. Merkavas are designed with hot, arid desert weather in mind, and that was what these things are built around, because of course Israel's in the middle of a desert pretty much for the most part, and one of the hottest areas of the world outside of Death Valley. Because of that, the Merkava isn't built with really anything involving heaters or any kind of heat involved. Everything inside the Merkava is based off of cooling off the tank's crew. And considering that, it has an inherent flaw when you start to try and move these Merkavas into Europe. Because in Europe, once you reach the fall, really once you reach early fall, the weather starts to drop in temperature in Europe by a considerable amount, and you start to see that these things will perform poorly, at least in terms of crew ergonomics, because the crew members will be freezing, and everything in the tank is designed to help the crew stay cold, not to warm up the crew. And so, and I'll say this, by the way, it is an amazing tank as far as tanks go. The design is incredible. It's unorthodox, but while it is unorthodox, it's a very good design. But I don't think that its ergonomics are really designed or tailored for the kind of environments you would see in Ukraine. It's more so for desert environments. And so while it would do good in Iraq, or it would do good in Saudi Arabia or Egypt, it wouldn't really do that well in Ukraine, just really because it's not designed for that kind of cold weather. It would require a lot of aftermarket modifications by the Ukrainians once they receive these things before we would ever see one on the front lines. Also, another cool thing about this tank is that it has a built-in water cooler. So there's a little water tank in this thing, and you fill it with water, and the tank has a refrigerator system in it, almost, that cools this water, and then it's fed through pipes to all of the crew stations inside of the tank, so that way the crew members can drink cold water at any given moment.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a really cool design feature. It's kind of like how all British tanks, like the Challenger 2, have a tea kettle inside of them. It's just it's like a creature comfort kind of addition to the vehicle. And also, I saw someone say, "Have you ever been in a desert when nighttime comes?" No, I haven't. It does get cold though, but at the same time, these tanks aren't really designed to just be in cold weather all the time. Because when the sun goes down here, even in Alabama, where it is in a desert, the temperature does drop by, I believe, something like 30 degrees, 30 or 40 degrees every single day. And that is just something that isn't really that major when you think about it, because nighttime lasts in a place like Israel maybe about 8 hours at the longest, and even in its longest part, well, even in winter, it would only last about 8 hours. And so while the temperature drops, it's nothing significant enough to really design the entire tank's premise around cold weather, because it just doesn't last long enough. In a place like Ukraine, however, you're talking about freezing cold days where there is snowfall. There's actual snowfall on the ground because it's that cold. And then on top of that, it gets colder at night. And so the ergonomics of this tank, the crew comfort side of things, probably wouldn't work. This would probably be a hated tank by Ukrainian tankers in the wintertime, by the time this thing would actually make it there, because they would be freezing to death in these things. And there would be nothing inside of the tank that's built to heat them up. It's all built to cool them down, and they're already freezing at that. So an amazing tank. It would probably do incredibly well against Soviet armor. I believe that some of the earlier iterations of the Merkava, such as the Merkava Mark I, may have actually been used in some of the wars that Israel was involved in with other countries surrounding them that do use Soviet arms and equipment. But I'll have to check on that real quick. Let me check. Merkava MBT. So let's see when this thing was introduced in service. It was introduced in 1979. It's been a part of the 1982 Lebanon War, the South Lebanon conflict, the 2006 Lebanon War, the second Intifada, the first Intifada, Operation Pillar, the Gaza War, and Operation Protective Edge. So it's not really any of the major wars like the Yom Kippur War. These were significant wars, but not as significant as the other ones where we could really gauge how this thing does on tank action. So it would probably do well. I would assume that it would do well. And apparently the Philippines Army uses these tanks. I did not know that. Let's see how many they have. I'm just interested in that, because I only thought the Israelis used these things. Let's see here. Let's see here. Organization. Come on, what about the equipment? Okay, I gotta go find out where in the world these are. Let's see. The combat support views. Man, the Philippines Army actually has stuff. Like, cool stuff, really. Like, stuff you don't see anywhere else in the world. But let's see here. Commercial light vehicles. And let's see. They got a whole bunch of support equipment. And then they got artillery. But what about the tanks? Haven't seen any tanks yet. Dang. But man, they got every single kind of rifle you can imagine. They got AUGs, M16s. M14s, AKMs, M1
These are loaded out.
Man,
I didn't know that.
These guys are kitted out. But let's see here. Man, I gotta be honest with you. The Philippines is like a sleeper army. You wouldn't expect them to have all this stuff, yet they are kitted to the nines. They got anything you could imagine in the world in this thing. Of course, that might be a nightmare to get ammunition for all this stuff, but that's a whole other story. Let me go back up here because I think we may have missed the tanks somehow. Let's see, there's the support equipment again, the civilian equipment, the transport trucks, the light utility vehicles, fire support vehicles, mine-resistant, ambush-protected, or APCs, tanks, and fire support. So they have this light tank. Actually, it doesn't appear that they have Merkavas, but they have this thing called the Elbit Sabra. Don't really know where this thing comes from. Where in the world? So it originates from Spain and Israel. It's a light tank. They have one of these in service, and it appears that they're actually trying to flesh out their armored forces. So they may have gotten an order, and that's why they say that the Philippines Army has Merkavas. They don't have them yet, but they're probably on order or something similar. Nonetheless, though, I think it would do great if it wasn't for the cold weather that they would deal with in Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting right back into the news.
And that was actually our last one.
No way. I call cap.
No cap on this one, I'm telling you. Oh, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Well, with that, we're going to be moving on out of the question segment and on down into the Novokakovka
Oh, also,
area.
real quick, did you see we're almost about to hit 6,000? We're like $80 away from hitting 6,000.
No.
Man,
No way.
I'm telling you. Crazy.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. We're about to blow it out of the water. Just blow it out of the water. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But moving on from that and into the area of Novokakovka, we can see the ruins of the Novokakovka Dam about 3 weeks after it got blown up on the 6th of June. There's the dam out there. You hear some kind of music.
That's some haunting music, if that's what that is.
Man, that's that kind of music you play when you're just walking around an abandoned hospital. I was in an abandoned hospital on the 15th of April, 1920. But we can see the remains of the dam here. Now we're going to have to mute that because that's turning into Minecraft cave music, and I'm not sure if that's copyrighted or not. But once again, there's the remains of the dam. Of course, completely gone. That is insane. It's really hard to even tell where the dam was at this point.
What's that wall in the background?
I believe that was the retaining wall because the dam itself wasn't that big. If we zoom in down here. So, I think what we're looking at is this here. This little spot. But we're looking at it from the reservoir. I can't really tell because then at the same time, there's a lot of sand back here, which shows that we may be looking from the south side north. And then I'm completely confused at this point because maybe it's that wall? Or maybe it's this one. It's really hard to tell. I gotta be honest with you. I don't even know what we're looking at here. But it is the remains of the dam area.
Damn.
Damn.
Literally.
Yeah, it's gone. And there's the pumping house. Of course, it shattered. The foundation cracked. And that's the end of the clip. But that's what remains of the dam. It's very hard to even tell that there was a dam there. It just looks like wreckage at this point. But moving on out of the Novokakovka Dam area and up towards Enerhodar, we also heard from here that, according to the mayor of the city, pretty much everyone that was involved with the operations of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant have left the area. According to the mayor of the city, Dmytro Orlov, he said parts of the collaborator workers of the ZNPP, the Ukrainian workers that signed a contract with Rosatom, as well as part of the staff of Rosatom, left Enerhodar of the Zaporizhzhia region. And they're just gone. They're going back to Russia. Nobody knows why, and nobody knows why an evacuation order was given to the workers there. But it is getting quite serious, and it does appear that there is a lot that is leading to the idea that it is entirely possible that the Russians are planning on blowing up this reactor, causing a meltdown. I know some people are going to say blowing up isn't an appropriate term. Y'all get the idea. A nuclear meltdown may be happening at this power plant, and from what we can tell, it may happen before the 5th of July, considering that the evacuation was supposed to happen before the 5th of July. With that, we're going to be moving on from that, of course, concerning news, and we're still keeping track of it. And we're now going to be moving on into our Frontline updates. According to what we're seeing on Deep State UA, once again, no advances have been made in the northeastern area. However, in Bakhmut, and no thank you. By the way, something cool as a tidbit to share with y'all. I saw a video today about guys who operate Deep State, and funnily enough, it's a duo of two guys, I think they're brothers, that make this map every single day.
Yeah, it's like us.
Yeah, just like us. So, funnily enough, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing, and it's a tandem group of, I think I'm not really sure if I'm remembering this right. I remember hearing that they were brothers as well, but they may also just be friends that work with each other, but it's just two guys that work on this whole thing from what I saw today. And that was actually pretty funny because it's like, hey, that's just like me and Matthew. But anyways, moving on from that and going on over into the 7th of July into the 2nd, we can see that no visible advances have been made today in the area of Bakhmut. However, we have seen some recorded action happening in this area. Starting off with our first clips on the southern flank, we saw some Ukrainian soldiers involved in a heavy firefight in this direction. I'll mute this. You can hear the firefight there, but I have to mute it because apparently they had to play a sea shanty over this, so it was very important for the video. Like, this woman is literally singing, "Hold her steady," and I'm like, I get if this was like a ship show or something, but this is a war, it's like, that doesn't really make sense to have a sea shanty. But we can now see the machine gunner laying down the fire. We also see him laying down the AK.
He's doing that sideways grip.
Man, he doing that gangsta grip. Man, it
I'm
feels
telling
good to
you.
be a gangsta. But we can now see him whipping out the RPG.
Man, it was a bad day. He had to use his AK.
Man, honestly,
He's trying to come with a joke to counter that one.
is it a good day to use an AK or a bad day to use an AK? Like, philosophically
I've confused
speaking.
myself at this point. I
Yeah,
don't know.
honestly, I'm confused as hell too. So we're just gonna drop that. We're just gonna drop that and keep going. But of course, the Ukrainians are continuing to fight in this area. Moving on to our next clip, we also saw some Ukrainian soldiers in the 3rd Brigade continuing the assault and apparently moving on across the canal zone near the area of Kurtimivka. We're gonna mute that because, of course, copyrighted music knows no bounds. And we can see here the Ukrainian APCs firing down the tree line as Ukrainian infantry clear out the trenches here near the canal zone and continue to advance. And we can see a very distinct landmark here. We can see the canal takes a curve over here, and we can also see this tree line takes the curve as well, and that gives us a good idea of where that may be. So let's head on up towards Bakhmut, and let's head on towards the canal zone. And we know that this is lying further south. So, it's a tree line over here. The canal does take a curve in this area, but we don't see that additional connecting tree line that we can see right back there. So we have to move a little bit further down. Can't see it there, but we might be able to see it a little bit further down than that. This might be it. Well, let's make sure. So actually, no. If you're looking at it from that way, it takes an opposite curve. Opposite curve, opposite curve. So, maybe... Nope, that's not it, because it doesn't have that little peg thing sticking out over there. Dang. Geolocation is tough. I gotta tell you, this is pretty freaking tough. Let's see here. Is that the right curve? Nope, wrong curve. So, how about here? Wait a minute. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, so this is where it is. They are up around the area of Klishkivka at this point in this video. Here's the curve. We can see the connecting tree line right there, and we can see the curve. We can also see the tree line over here and the small road that follows along it. So what we're seeing is the drone camera flying about right here, right in this spot, looking around to the southeast. This is what we're seeing exactly. So now with that in mind, let's let the clip play. We can see the Ukrainians clearing out Russian positions. We can see the Ukrainian infantry advancing down there as their APCs and MRAPs continue to cover their advance down the road. Oh,
we're lagging out.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, man, we're going to have to wait.
Just a wee bit of lag. Oh,
just a wee. I know I'm about to see in the live chat. Lag! Yes, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry.
Panic!
It lagged out for a minute. Of course, I think that means to dump the stocks, like or something like that. We just need to let the economy tank now. But sorry about that, everyone. Looks like the weather outside is frightful, and so the lag is so delightful.
I knew you were gonna do that.
Yeah, so sorry about that, everyone. But we're going to be getting back to the clip. When you see the Ukrainians here giving the Russians a little bit of lag. It's not jet lag, though. It's nade lag, and we can see another outpost being cleared there as they continue to clear out the trenches. And that explosion was right in the outpost, so they cleared it. Also, I like how the Russians literally dug a trench shaped like an arrow pointing directly at their outpost.
Oh, jeez.
You know, look at
My
that.
God.
The super secret outpost is right here, boy. A giant trench arrow dug out in sand. It's like, wow, what an idiot. Anyways,
Dummies.
moving on from that, and moving on into our next clip in this area, we also saw the Ukrainians cleaning up a glider. And they weren't cleaning this thing up with soaps and suds. They were cleaning this thing up with a drone bomblet. We can see that the Russian Zala drone landed, and the Ukrainians are about to hit it with that Zaza. Watch and learn.
Hey, we hit 6,000. Yeah!
Hey!
Jaga, jaga, Igor.
Igor, блядь, сука.
Damn, that was a very distressed-sounding Igor. My goodness.
Well, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I can't help it, man. But we can see them getting rid of the Zala right there. And there's a little infographic of the Zala. Blah. Wait, that literally just says, blah, Zala. It's like, dude, it perfectly works for alcoholic Russians right there. Blah, Zala. Okay, Volodymyr. But we can see that they got it. Of course, nice to see. And that's the end of the clip. Now, with that in mind, we're going to be moving a little bit further north towards the Seversk area to show y'all something really neat. Apparently, the Ukrainians have gotten a hold of an M992 transport recharge vehicle. Now, many of y'all probably don't know what this is, and I gotta be honest with y'all, I didn't know what the hell this thing was today either. But I did some researching and I found out this is what it is. Is that cool or what?
That is pretty cool looking, I will say.
Now, you know what its job is, Matthew?
Its job is to roll around and carry stuff.
Exactly. And it carries
Yes.
shells. Yes, блядь. It carries shells for the artillery. That's the rear view of this thing.
Oh my goodness.
And it has a special built little rack and everything to make the reloading of SPGs, specifically the M109 Paladin, as seen here, a whole lot easier. So this thing drives up to a Paladin like that, you know, looking all tanky and boxy and stuff. It whips out that special little loading implement on the back of the vehicle, and it just slides the ammo straight out of this thing, straight into the Paladin that's behind it, and they can reload these things within minutes. It cuts down the loading time by a massive amount, and apparently, from what we've been told, this has never been publicly listed on a support package, but they have these, and they're using them to resupply and rearm their M109 Paladins. Really cool. I gotta say, that is really neat. I never even knew these things existed, and the Army has something for everything. And I believe that
That thing is basically a mobile powder keg, though. I would hate to drive that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the modern version of a petard. You know, it's like it's just waiting to blow up. And so, well, I'm not gonna make that joke. That's a good joke though, but we can't make that one. But anyways, it's a really cool little system right there. You know, honestly though, everything that carries ammo to the Paladin would be a powder keg. Even if it was a normal supply truck, it would be a powder keg just because it's carrying around that much ammo. But really neat to see that they have purpose-built ammo carriers for Paladins. I didn't know about that. Also, I like the Mark 19 they put up there on this one. You know, enemy infantry front. You just start throwing 40mm grenades out. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little interesting bit of news. I just thought it was a really neat little vehicle to show y'all. And great to know that the United States is sending them everything, and we're thinking about everything, so that way they can keep this going and keep the war running. And also, by the way, there's the picture of the Ukrainians riding around on top of this thing as it goes to resupply these M109 Paladins that they're using. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that neat little bit of news, and a little bit further on down the line and past Bakhmut, and on into the area of Marinka and also Staromakalivka. And so moving on down here, we saw that the Russian BM-21 Grad was destroyed. And so, we can see the Grad. And we can hear some crappy music. And now you can see it getting hit, and the rockets fire off a little early. Man. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And it is nice to see that they were able to get a BM-21 Grad. And so with that, we're going to be
that was actually quite deserving of the chicken dance.
I guess so. Is that the chicken dance, though?
I thought it was.
I don't know.
What is it?
I don't know. I just know it is the Iba Didi Do song. That's all I know.
I'm pretty sure it's a chicken dance. I'm pretty sure.
Dude, I feel
like
like
a hamster dance. It's not a chicken. It's a hamster dance.
Man, we talking about that cheeky up here. But anyways, moving on from that, we saw the SBU destroy a tank in the area of Staromakalivka today. With an FPV drone, by the way. So here it is. Have you ever wanted the Undertaker to take your tank away in amazing fashion? Well, then you, my friend, you've come to the right place. And I love how everyone always wants to tell me that the song is public domain until I play it, and then we get copyrighted. And then everyone wants to complain there's ads on the stream. So I mean, I don't mean to go off on that. I know you have honest intentions, but I've dealt with that for 500 days nearly at this point, and it's never copyright free. But we can see that FPV drone go down on that Russian tank, and now we can see that Russian tank blowing up. There's the puff, letting us know that tank is gone. Have you ever wanted to make it look like you were smoking meth on the other side of a tree line? Well, then hit a Russian tank with an FPV drone and you'll be smoking white clouds like never before. Take a look at that. That's absolutely impressive. But anyways, we're now going to get to the other side of that tree line where we can see that tank burning out. And it kind of looks like a T-62 with ERA tiles mounted onto it. Can't really tell. But with
Man,
that,
that's what that smoke is what vapors look like on a Monday morning.
man, I'm telling you. Man, I'm
The
telling
world's best vapor.
you. Dude, the vape shops will be turning that into a commercial before long. You better watch out. They'll be on TV going, "Hey, come down to the local vape shop. Look, our vapes smoke like Russian tanks." But anyways, moving on from that, we also saw another Russian tank being hit by an FPV drone inside of Marinka. Oh yeah, I forgot, by the way. Let's hear the audio. Man, that sounds like dead animals. But anyways, you see the FPV drone coming in right there. Oh, bleh. That's a let there be lights. But we can see it hit. And somehow, this tank actually survived the hit. The camera hardly didn't.
That's a ghastly sound.
Man, when this tank comes around, they go, "What is that?" "That is the sound of dying hamsters, Blitz." Dang! Could they make this thing sound worse?
That's like the sound they used to play in in the forest in Vietnam to scare off the Vietnamese.
Yeah, you know, that kind of is. That's kind of just like that, isn't it? Oh, hey, by the way, you know, the Russians are trying to show how invincible they are and everything. But I think what's ironic about this video is that while this tank apparently does survive 2 FPV drones hitting it and it doesn't blow up, it appears that the BTR-80 right over there to the left side of the screen was not as lucky. Just saying, you know, if they're trying to make it look like the Russian army is invincible, I don't think the literally half destroyed BTR-80 on the left side of the screen is really helping out with that image much. But anyways, let's get back to the tank. We now see the gunner making his slight adjustments to the tank, well, the tank's gun, getting ready to fire. And there was a second FPV drone, I believe. Oh, wait, no. The second FPV drone's coming here in a minute. That was the tank firing. And now, I think the FPV drone's coming up. Yep, there we go. And we can see it rip that BTR to shreds again. Well. And let's see how much of that BTR is left. Sadly, the giant gash in the camera lens is blocking the BTR-80 now. But we can see that this tank was able to survive 2 FPV drones. Very lucky for this Russian tank crew. Not so lucky for the BTR-80, though, that got enveloped in this nuclear flash that happened right here. Because it appears that that was what the FPV drone actually ended up hitting, was the BTR-80 instead of the tank. And so it appears that the Ukrainian drone pilot may have gotten his target a little confused on the way and forgot that the BTR-80 had already been knocked out earlier. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, a little bit further down the line and in the southern front, where we saw near the town of Pavlivka, some Ukrainian tankers driving forward. And it just looked nice. So, here you go. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, y'all wanted music, by the way. I'm making sure it's copyright free. But it's you see them crossing the railroad tracks there in their tanks and making their way to the front line. Just making their way downtown. And there's a bus stop right there. You know, one thing that always is just so weird to me is that there are these giant slag heaps from mining back during the Soviet Union.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's what that is. It's not a natural hill. That's actually a giant slag heap of rocks that they unearthed in mining, and they would just go and pile them up. And so they end up looking kind of like mountains, but they exist in the middle of the plains. There are no mountains or large hills like that in the plains. So that's a man-made slag heap out there that's starting to become overgrown and kind of look like a hill.
That's wild.
Yeah, and whenever I see that kind of stuff, I'm always like, man, That is insane. And you can see it up close right there, zoomed in, and you can see it's just rocks. You know, there's almost no grass or anything on that thing. And it's always just so bizarre to see those things. Rather than that, this would just be a flat plain with nothing in it. But still, really neat to see some Ukrainian tanks on the move to the front line. With that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news near Makarivka, where we also saw an emergency delivery to the front line. Check it out.
Доставка
You
пиццы
see them running through the trenches.
приехала на фронт.
Some pretty overgrown trenches. Hopping out of the trench into the car.
В ресторан Окопчик.
Grabbing the items.
Давай. Спасибо, ребятки. Вот. Пожалуйста.
Was that pizza?
Oh, he got a coffee. Hey,
Coffee and pizza. That's like our food right there.
Dude, they got Ukrainian Eats out there on the job. Dude, they come up, they go, hello, it's Slava Ukrainian Eats. Oh, thank you. Then they get their pizzas and coffee.
Рады заказать у вас.
I didn't know Domino's went out this
За
far.
быстроту благодарим.
Apparently they do, and it's still hot and ready. Wait a minute, sorry, that's Caesar's Pizza.
Little Caesars.
Yeah, Little
Вот
Caesar.
он наш ресторанчик.
And then we hear
And
that.
Ukrainians call it Big Caesars, bliat.
We call it massive Caesar blend. But still, well, that's the end of that little video right there. And it's really cool to see them get food like that. And also, one thing that's always crazy to think about, Matthew, is that we're always used to the United States Army being overseas in a foreign country without much support. You know, so they have to eat MREs and stuff that is brought in all the way from the United States most of the time, or kind of sourced locally, but, you know, that really depends on if the area is friendly or not. What's weird, though, is that when the Ukrainians are fighting this war, you know, and you don't really think about it much, you know, like a battlefield like near Ivanivsky right now, you just drive back to Konstantinivka and go buy pizzas at the pizza store and then just drive right back up to the front line. And there's nothing really stopping you from doing that.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, there's nothing really stopping them from just eating normal food. So it's really just more of like a thing of availability if they have the time to go back there and pick up food. Otherwise, they eat MREs, and if they have time, they just drive back behind the lines a little bit to one of the active towns like Konstantinivka, and they just go buy something from there. And when you think about that, that's really bizarre. That would be like a war happening in America, Matthew, like just south of Birmingham, like near Clanton, and the front lines at Clanton, and you hop in a car and you drive to Pelham and you go pick up Papa John's and then drive back to the front line. You know, it's kind of like that.
That's actually pretty convenient now that you think about it.
Yeah,
they're making war a lot different these days.
Man, I'm telling you, they all used to say war never changes. Honestly, war does change. These guys are eating pizza and drinking coffees on the front line that were just bought behind the lines. I mean, that's some pretty wild stuff when you think about it. We're living in the future right here. But with that, moving on to our next clip, we can see the Azov, some pictures of the Azov in the southern front. Here's one picture. Uh-oh. All of those AK fans out there, they shivering in the timbers. We got a Canadian, I believe it's a C4 right here.
C4?
Yeah,
Wow.
see, I think it's a, let me
Explosion plus shooting bliat.
C4 rifle. Let me make sure it's a C4. Yeah, I think it's a C4 rifle. Wait, let me just put in Canadian rifle. I think it may be a C7. Yeah, it's a C7. I got that wrong. But there's a C7 right there. You can see that this is also a C7 rifle. But still based on the M4. When you see some Azov soldiers once again in the trench, just kind of hanging out. See some of them moving up into the front lines. We can see another picture of a guy looking into the light outside of his dugout. In the next picture, we can see another guy with another C7 smiling as he looks over the cameraman and into the distance. For some reason, this picture looks like it's setting up for an ad by Trilisec or something like that. And then in this last picture, we can see some more Ukrainian soldiers here in the trenches. Pretty cool to see them, though, and just some pictures of everyday life on the front line. Moving on from that and on into our next bit of news on top of that. Behind the lines near Lyubimivka, we saw that the Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian Tor surface-to-air missile launcher. Check it out as they play the Minecraft cave music. We can see the Tor backing up into the tree line here as the drone starts to call in its coordinates to the artillerymen. And we're about to see the artillerymen get the shot. There goes a Tor surface-to-air missile right there. It just went off right out of the cell. Oh, and we flatlined.
Oh, we got a little lag.
Little lag. Little lag. They coming little, they coming
Man.
big.
Lagaholics. Walk with your Wi-Fi. We make it look difficult.
Try and kill off our viewership. Oh, man. But with that, we can see the Tor missile now slamming back into the field. It's probably going to set that wheat field on fire. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But hey, pretty cool to see. Pretty nice to know they got another Tor. We're now going to be moving on from that and moving on into the area near Huilopol, where we also saw another Grad being destroyed by the Ukrainians. This time, it's not a BM-21 Grad, it's a BM-27 Uragan. Get jiggy with it. And we can see them climbing around on their Uragan and now driving off. It's an Uragan battery. And the Ukrainians are about to commit assault on this battery. We see the Uragans trying to hide in the tree lines. As usual, a common tactic by the Russians. It will prove to be unsuccessful, as seen there. Oh! Got a little snap, crackle, and pop. Call this thing Rice Krispies. Oh!
Damn.
Man, it takes out another Russian unit. Friendly fire will not be tolerated. But we can see
Man, their luck just won't let up.
Man, oh man, I'm telling you, I can't catch a break around here. But still, another BM-27 Uragan destroyed. Good to know. We're going to be moving on from the area of Huilopol and down into the area of Arikiv and Robotny, where we saw that the Ukrainians were able to take some new positions in this area today. I mean, you see a firefight going on here after they retook the position, and what pistol was that?
Not a Glock?
No, it's not a Glock, because its ejection port's on the right side.
Oh, the Glocks is too.
Are you sure? I thought the Glocks was just across the entire pistol.
I mean, it ejects the bullet to the right.
Yeah, but anyways.
All right.
Well, here's what I'm saying though. Let me show you here real quick. Glock 17. So the Glocks. Okay, never mind. You have a point. For some reason in my head, I was thinking that the Glock's ejection port went over the entire top of the gun. I guess that's because it goes that far over, almost to the other side. I don't. By the way, y'all, I don't really handle Glocks much to even really know. So that's why.
Missing out.
Yeah, well, maybe. But you know, Matthew, I do have that Colt Anaconda 44 Magnum. But anyways,
that's true. That's true.
Oh man, the wrist breaker, really the thumb breaker. I found it doesn't really break your wrists; it just really breaks your thumbs. It bruised my thumb when I went and shot it. But anyways, moving on from that, it could have been a Glock. Didn't really look like one, but anyways, moving on from that, moving on into our next clip, we also saw the 36 Marines destroying some Russian positions. Man, and what an intro. Take a look at that. We got ourselves a Strela 10 down there. Someone just said a whole grand is incoming. Hopefully to the fundraiser. I would flip if that was to the fundraiser. But we can see these Strela here getting burned. Quite nice. And now we can see a Mr. S, one of Russia's best SPGs, also burning up in that tree line as well. Man, the Glocks are getting hated on right now, man.
Come on, man.
Man, I'm telling you, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not that big of a fan of Glock, you know what I mean? You know, honestly, to be honest with y'all, I'm a big fan of revolvers, specifically Colt or Smith & Wesson, because you just can't go wrong with Colt or Smith & Wesson.
What do you mean you don't like Glocks? Can you do some push-ups, fatty? I mean, well, anyways.
It's okay. But with that, the Marines were taking out some Russian positions today. Pretty good. And moving on from that, and also, we just got an answer from Jay about what kind of pistol that is. That is a Fort pistol. Fort pistol. Let's take a look. Yep, that's it. Yeah, that's the one right there. A Fort 20.
That's different. I've never really seen one of those before.
Man, this thing kind of looks funky now that I see it, like, just as it is. Like, that thing's
It
kind of
reminds me of a Sig Sauer P320 a little bit.
Kinda, yeah. You know, honestly, gotta be honest with you here. This thing's a little wonky. And it's interesting though. I would like to get my hands on one of these. Don't know where I'd get my hands on one of these, but oh, look at that! Oh, now that's a cool one. The 412. Now look at that.
That's definitely different. That's some fine wood furniture on that. Look at that grip.
Man, look at the engraving on this thing. Now that's an impressive pistol right there, just because of the engraving and everything on it. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on. And also, who are the users of this? Russia uses it, Ukraine uses it, Belarus uses it. Pretty much everyone in the Eastern European world uses this thing. And also, apparently, there's one Fort 12 pistol in all of Poland. So that they made a special note of that on Wikipedia. Anyways, moving on from that, pretty cool pistol, and thank you for sharing that with us, Jay, because I didn't know what kind of pistol that was. But moving on into our next clip, we saw some Ukrainian soldiers driving around behind the lines with their gas masks on. Man, they're going all enforcer mode up in here wearing the gas masks.
Yeah, they're repping the channels.
Oh, I see why.
Pretty menacing when you're wearing a gas mask. Oh, this is one from Mira Safety, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I recognize it. It's that full face style.
I see why they have them on. They're using them as impromptu windshields because they just stuck the camera out of the front of the car. So that's why they have them on, so that way they don't get rocks in their eyes and stuff.
That's smart.
Yeah, pretty smart, pretty smart. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on to our last one near the town of Hruzove, where we saw a pretty direct hit. Oh yeah! We make it look easy. Walk with your boys. Real trap. And we can see the FPV drone coming in on this Russian dugout, hitting it, taking it on out. Look at that. Dang. Talk about a hit. Ooh. That's pretty direct. And then we get a little outro. All in all, a pretty well-rounded video. And so with that, nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to wipe out another Russian dugout, and hopefully they can continue on to do great things like that, and eventually begin the counteroffensive, which, by the way, that's what the title was about tonight. The Ukrainians announced that the counteroffensive will begin with 100% effort in 2 days' time. That means it will fall directly on the 4th of July. And so we'll be waiting to see if that happens. Of course, I have to make this clear. The 4th of July will be a channel holiday here. We may put out a war summary in the middle of the day. We are certainly not doing a live stream on the 4th of July. We are going to be taking that day off, so that way we can celebrate the 4th of July with family and friends. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of this news and on up into the city of Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, without further ado, here's the speech, and it's quite short. Maybe I'll be able to get a restroom break, but that's about it. And so, here's the clip. Speech.
Good health to you, fellow
Ukrainians. God.
Today, I am in Odessa, first and foremost, to congratulate our warriors of the Ukrainian Navy on their professional day. To congratulate them and thank them for their courage, heroism, and the extraordinary results they have achieved and are achieving for Ukraine. It is enough to recall what ambitions Russia had at the beginning of the full-scale aggression and what ambitions are now at the bottom of the Black Sea. I thank every warrior of the Ukrainian Navy, all sailors, all Marines, all commanders of our Navy, artillerymen, naval aviators, drone operators. I thank the warriors of the River Flotilla, River Divisions. I thank you all. Today, I had the honor to award the best and congratulated the cadets of the Institute of Naval Forces of our Odessa Maritime Academy. I visited the wounded warriors in the hospital. I wish everyone a speedy recovery. It was a special honor for me to leave my wishes on the copy of Kobzar that has been accompanying our warriors in battle since 2014. Today, I also heard the report by our Navy commander, Vice Admiral Oleksiy Nizhpapa, and commander of the Odessa Operational and Strategic Group of Troops, General Moskaloff. They spoke about the current security situation and the strategic tasks for our fleet for the new direction the fleet of naval drones, and for our coastal defense. We will implement everything. I am sure of it. The enemy will definitely not dictate the conditions in the Black Sea, and the occupiers will have to be as afraid of approaching our Ukrainian Crimea and our Azov Sea coast as Russian ships are already afraid of approaching our Black Sea coast. Today, I also congratulate all civilian workers of the Ukrainian Sea and River Fleet, all those who ensure the security and operation of our ports, our ability to give life to the Ukrainian economy, and connect our Ukraine with global markets, despite the Russian blockade of the Black Sea. I thank all the sailors, port workers, ship repairers, businesses, employees, and of course every soldier who protects the security of Ukrainian ports, Ukrainian cities, and Ukrainian shores. We will win together. Ukrainian shores will never tolerate the occupier. Glory to all our defenders. I thank you, Odessa, for this day. Glory to Ukraine.
And Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 494th night of the news. And with that, it begins a night of amazing stuff. It begins what happened? It begins a night of live questions and polls and call-outs and shout-outs to folks who have helped out this fundraiser. And so, with that, Matthew, I'm going to allow you to go ahead and take this thing on away.
All right, so for our final question segment of the night, first we have to recap our fundraiser, which is currently sitting at $6,284. So far above goal. It is exactly $1,284 above goal. And I can do math. But thank you all very much for donating to that fundraiser tonight. Once again, we have another success. And of course, it's all because of the LSA. So once again, thank you all for that very, very generous donations to the fundraiser. And with that being said, I'm going to quickly call off our remaining top donors of the night. We have a 50 from the straight face person that doesn't have a name, but they put in the emoji of the straight face. And thank you very much. We have a 50 from Greg Carrier. We also have a 50 from Steve Watkins at work and a 50 from Miranda Nelson. And once again, thank you as well for that very generous donations. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it is amazing to know that so many people have supported tonight's fundraiser and helped it to get to $6,300 nearly. That is absolutely incredible. And I've got to thank everyone so much once again for being a part of an amazing night as far as fundraisers go and helping us to save more lives in Ukraine. Ever since this channel began, it has had a purpose and an idea and a goal of helping to save the lives of people in Ukraine. And so far, this channel has never fallen short of that goal and has made it far beyond any other channel has. It's really a testament to this community in the Lee Spring Army as to how far this channel has made it in all kinds of metrics. And y'all have helped out this channel to reach these goals and make these fundraisers happen for so long. There is no other channel out there on YouTube that has raised $1,040,000 in support of Ukraine ever. Not a single one of them, from what I understand, rather than Mr. Beast's channel. And Mr. Beast is, of course, the largest channel on YouTube, so that obviously would make some sense. But no one else out there has gotten to this point. And it's entirely because of y'all in the Lee Spring Army. Y'all are truly a special group. The greatest group there is on YouTube. There's no other community that can come close to the good that y'all have done and the generosity that y'all have in what y'all do to save people's lives over there through y'all's support to these nonprofits. It is truly amazing, and it's amazing to know so many other things that y'all have made possible for this channel. Who would have ever thought, and this is something that's actually quite wild, but I'll share with y'all because I just saw this the other day. Who would have ever thought that we would rival live streams on YouTube like ABC News? I would have never thought that. That's crazy. Yeah, I would have never thought that, but believe it or not, nightly, we usually nowadays compete with ABC News for live stream viewership on a normal night. And that's truly insane when you think about it. And what's even more insane is to know that y'all have helped out with this nonprofit and all the nonprofits we've ever fundraised for more than any other community ever has. And for that, I've got to give y'all a huge round of applause and a huge amount of thanks for making this fundraiser tonight possible, and also to make all of this possible. And so thank you to every single one of y'all so much once again for making these fundraisers what they are. They're absolutely amazing, and without them, this channel wouldn't be as special as it is. It's truly amazing. And of course, you know, I've got to say this because I did mention this a little bit earlier in the night. Not going to harp on it too much, but it is also great to know that many people haven't listened to the slander that's pretty much going around, well, was going around, it's largely dropped off now, about this channel, and have continued to stick with us and help to fundraise through our channel and the nonprofits that we support here through YouTube Give. It's incredible to know that so many of y'all have, because, you know, one thing that I've seen on the internet, you know, of course, covering this war, is that someone can say anything, even if it's completely untrue and has no merit, and people will believe it on a moment's notice. And while it appears that, unfortunately, some people have ended up taking this Kool-Aid of whoever out there is putting it out, and y'all know who it is, many of y'all have not, and many of y'all have continued to help these fundraisers to get to where they are, and to that, I thank y'all so much once again, because without y'all helping out these fundraisers, without y'all supporting this channel through the 5 days of the week we are not running a fundraiser, it would have never been possible for this channel to do either to run this long or to help out in Ukraine so much. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also just say, just saw someone say he moved on. He may have moved on, but that doesn't stop the damage that he's done. And that's visible even when our fundraisers went from raising around 10,000 every weekend to around 7,000 every weekend, and now it looks like it's down to 6,000 every weekend. So the damage is not done. The damage isn't over. He may have moved on, but the damage still stays. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so with that being said, we are moving into our first poll of the last question segment, which says, Ukraine says French AMX-10 RCs are not sufficient to perform in battle, and several have been destroyed. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 41% said not good, France sent bad equipment, 24% said I need more info first, 20% said Ukraine isn't using them properly, and 14% said unsure. And on this one, we actually said a long time ago when these AMX-10s were sent, and the enforcer pointed this out to me earlier today, that they have very thin armor, and they're not really designed to be charging through the front lines, and it seems like Ukraine might be using it for the wrong purpose. Of course, they might be a little low on equipment, so they're being forced to use those on the front lines, but that could explain why they're being destroyed at a higher rate. But enforcer, what say you?
I would say, from what we understand, and, you know, and I don't mean this in a bad way or anything, but the Ukrainians are just using the AMX-10 in the completely wrong way. And we talked about the AMX-10 to an extreme level of detail before it arrived in Ukraine, and they are making complaints that were kind of known before this thing even arrived over there. They're saying that this thing has no armor. And I don't really know if anyone never told them, but it's a recon vehicle. It's supposed to be a main battle tank or anything that's going and fighting against the best vehicles the Russians have, like a T-72. This thing is meant to move around incredibly quickly, find where the enemy is, fire off a pot shot or two, and then turn around and run away immediately. This thing is not made to go toe-to-toe with main battle tanks, or really to go toe-to-toe with anything. That 105mm gun is there so that way they can get off that quick shot at the start and take everyone off guard and destroy a single vehicle and then leave. This thing is not meant to be up there just duking it out with people, and that appears to be, and well, that sounds to be what the Ukrainians are doing with this thing, is that they're attempting to use it as some kind of a main battle tank or even a medium tank, which is just not what this thing is built for. It's really just built for recon. And so, you know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me what their complaint is about this thing, because obviously it has no armor. It's a light tank. Light tanks have no armor. And really quickly, I believe we actually have armor stats on this thing. Specifications. Armor. The frontal armor is resistant against 23mm armor-piercing incendiary from about 300 meters. And that right there tells you this thing has no armor. Really, the only thing it can hold up against is a BRDM2 firing its 14.5mm gun at this thing. That's really the only thing it can hold up against. But that's about it. It's just not built to. It's not built like other tanks. It's not a Leopard 2. It's not an Abrams. It isn't a T-72. This thing is a light tank. Its whole job is to just move quickly, find people, fire off a shot, and then run away. So I don't know why the Ukrainians are complaining about the lack of armor on this thing, because it's a light tank. That's a part of it being a light tank. So with that, I hope that does address that further well. And Gary Cross made a good statement as well. He said, if you're doing recon, you shouldn't be doing any firing, so your idea of its tactics is incorrect. But here's the thing, though. The recon units do sometimes engage the enemy. Sometimes it's inevitable, because they may drive up on a Russian unit, and they see them, and they go, oh crap, and they fire off a quick shot, so that way it throws them into disarray and chaos, and then they turn around and they run off. Recon, if Recon's job wasn't to shoot anyone, then they just send up Recon guys without weapons, or they'd send them up in some kind of a Land Rover, and they would just pray for the best. That's why the Recon has weapons, is because of every once in a while they have to get involved in the knit and grit in a little firefight and then report back what they saw. And that's why this thing has a 105mm gun, but it still doesn't make much sense. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to complain about the lack of armor of this thing. I'm trying to get that across. It's a light tank. It's not made to have armor. It's made to see people and then run away. That's the whole point of the thing. And you can even see here that this thing is called an armored reconnaissance vehicle, or you can kind of stretch it and call it a wheeled tank destroyer. Either way, this thing isn't supposed to be on the lines for long. It's just supposed to drive up there. Like, the best way to explain this, drive-by shooting. That's the whole strategy with an AMX-10, is to drive-by shoot people. It's not supposed to be sitting up there, hey, let's fire 10 rounds at the enemy and just sit still. No, you're going to die. That's just what will happen with an AMX-10. So with that, I hope that addresses that, in my opinion, fairly well. You know, not trying to be extremely critical of the Ukrainians. They're probably trying to make this thing work like a BMP, but it isn't a BMP. It's a totally different beast. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll said Russia funded Wagner Group with $10 billion in contracts during the Ukraine war, and that's from Russian sources. And did Russia rely too heavily on Wagner? 74% said they did, 6% said unsure, 12% said it is what it is, and 7% said Russia relied appropriately on Wagner. And to me, I think it's very clear that Russia was relying on a PMC, a private military, to basically do most of their fighting for them in the toughest areas. And right at the end, Putin started trying to basically eliminate them in Bakhmut by sending them into the meat grinder. And it looked like Prigozhin was more than happy to basically oblige that. So to me, I think Putin knows his forces are no good, so he's trying to outsource it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the Russians are in a huge bind now that the Wagner is no longer a recognized group of theirs, because that was the way they actually conducted any dealings outside of Russia for the most part, without getting Russia directly involved. So I would say they're in a bit of a bind. I would suspect that in maybe a year or two's time, we'll see some kind of a replacement to the Wagner pop up, but it's going to have some major changes to it, so that way the Russians have a little bit more control over it, or they may completely behave with that mercenary group a completely different way. Because while it's technically illegal under Russian law for a PMC to exist from inside of Russia, that doesn't really matter. The law means nothing in Russia, and they're going to try and make one again, so that way they can get back into all that sweet dealings they were having in Central Africa and the Middle East. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, sources say Ukraine will begin its second big push in the counteroffensive in a few days. And what are your thoughts? 68% said it's coming and the pressure is on. 18% said it might, but no evidence yet. 10% said unsure, and 5% said it's not happening and totally false. And on this one, the statement, one of the sources was the president of Serbia. And I know folks are going to have problems with that source. However, he was very specific. And I do understand where the concerns are coming from about him. But just taking what he said at face value for a moment, which some people are going to say is naive, I understand that. But just looking at it the way it is, I would say it sounds logical that Ukraine might begin its second big push before the Vilnius summit comes up in about 2 weeks or so, to try to show some progress to present to NATO at that summit. But of course, that comes down to personal opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that. Oh, I heard this, Matthew. I was like, oh, I was like,
from me?
Yeah, I heard that in your microphone. I was like, uh-oh. I was like, are you good? But to answer that, I would say it's probably going to start in the next few days. They may go all in the next 2 or 3 days. So I would agree that's most likely what's going to most probably happen, but we'll, of course, have to wait and see. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, is it crucial for Ukraine to show major advances before attending the NATO Vilnius summit in 2 weeks? Well, I choke over here. It looks like 39% said no, NATO support doesn't rely on it. 38% said yes, Ukraine must show progress to NATO. 16% said probably so, but maybe not. And 7% said unsure. And I'm with the 38%. I think Ukraine wants to show progress to NATO. Obviously, that would be a help just from a common sense standpoint. But at the same time, I'm not sure if that's going to cause their support to go away if they don't have major progress to show. But Enforcer, what say you?
Could you reread that prompt again? Man, you're doing it again over there. I heard it.
Yes, trying to breathe here. The question is it crucial for Ukraine to show major advances before attending the NATO Vilnius summit in 2 weeks?
I don't really think it is, but I think they're trying to do it so that way they can go in a much stronger position than they would otherwise. They're going to get support regardless at the Vilnius summit. But if they can prove that they're going to be making massive offensive gains, that of course puts them on a far better footing going into that than they would have been otherwise. And it makes their position a lot stronger. And it makes it look like the Ukrainians are making real progress. So I have a feeling that there may be some diplomatic pressures here that may lead to them going all in this offensive fairly soon. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll. And real quick, I have to explain something. I have to come clean real quick. I'm actually quite ill right now. I'm very sick, but I didn't want to mess up the fundraiser stream tonight by having to jump off early during the fundraiser. So please excuse me if I'm a little bit short of breath because right now I am feverish, I have chills, and I'm in rough shape. But I'm not jumping off. Yes, I do. But I'm not jumping off just yet because this fundraiser stream has hit well above goal, and we're going to finish it off properly, hell or high water. So with that being said, we're moving on to our live chat questions, and the first one goes to Ray P. He says, why would Russia cause a nuclear disaster when the wind flow looks like it would blow towards Crimea and then east towards Russia, looking at AccuWeather wind map Ukraine?
I would say that was an amazing question, but honestly, I'm distracted by the fact that Matthew has a fever, because that means I will also be getting that fever here soon. But real quick, Matthew, I hate to do this to you, but could you reread that one again?
Yes, it says, why would Russia cause a nuclear disaster when the wind flow looks like it would blow towards Crimea and then east towards Russia, looking at AccuWeather wind map Ukraine?
They're planning on doing it so that way they can hopefully cause enough damage to whoever, wherever, that would probably end the war. That's kind of their goal and aim right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question goes to Tattoo, who says, Matt, if they attack the ZNPP on the 4th, is it a middle finger to the USA?
Most likely so, I would say, yeah, because at that point, the symbolism of the date is so much that would be a huge middle finger to the United States, like try and do something now, or something similar. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I see some folks getting concerned thinking I have the deadly plague that we won't mention live on the air because YouTube doesn't like that. It's not that, it's just a little virus running around the house. And it looks like we're all going to get it now. I'm sorry, Enforcer. But anyways.
Damn it.
Yeah, sadly so.
I got to tell y'all, our dad has had this for a few days, I think a week at this point. And we've all been avoiding him. And I don't know how in the world you got it, man, because I feel like you avoided pops more than I did. And somehow you ended up getting it next. So
I'm telling you, it didn't work very well.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I got sick as a dog, real sick. Man, going off of this logic, I need Pops to just cough in my face. I guess I won't get sick at that point. But hopefully this doesn't end up spreading quickly. Because there are plans, some other plans that are going on in the background that I guess well, actually, that won't involve you. This one particular plan, the other one won't. But there is another one. But anyways. That is quite concerning for me because considering that we've never gotten sick running this thing for 500 days now, I don't know if that's going to affect our stream schedule here soon if we are both down sick, because we might end up canceling a stream or two there. But anyways, with that, hate to hear that Matthew's getting sick. because one, that sucks for Matthew because he's having to run on the show right now, and I also didn't know it was
hello.
that bad. He was texting me during the stream. He was saying, "Hey man, I don't really feel that well." I didn't know that Matthew had a fever and everything. He hadn't told me that, and this happened apparently pretty
Man,
quickly.
I'm sticking this thing out like a trooper. I'm telling you.
Man, oh man, I'm telling you, he gets a lot of respect around here. People are praying for him in the chat. The cult of Matt, oh man, I'm telling you, strong, real strong. Oh man, I saw the cult of Matt. They said they had a broken iron chain. Oh man, I'm telling you, really strong. With that, we're going to be moving on to the next, and also, while we are continuing on as normal, in consideration of Matthew being sick as a dog, it sounds like, and that's also why he's breathing and everything in the microphone and I'm hearing it, and also that may be why he sounds a little different, is because he's getting sick. We're only going to be answering questions until 11:15 local time, which will be 12:15 Eastern time, and then we'll be rounding this thing out a little bit early. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also big shout out to Rustin Rott, who put in a $50 donation to the fundraiser and brought us up to $6,392. So big shout out to Rustin Rott, and thank you very much for that generosity. And moving on to our next live chat question, we have one from Ravenna Rose, who says, "I read that Russia is cremating their dead soldiers without record keeping, so they don't have to pay compensation to the families. And what have you heard?"
We've heard something similar to that. We've also heard that they don't recover bodies from the front line for the same reason. So from what we understand, that is the case at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Tom Exman, who says, "Has the city of Enhodar been evacuated as well as the ZNPP now?"
The city of Enhodar has not been evacuated at the moment.
Oh man, I'm telling you, we're lagging out over here. Oh man.
All right, so with that, it looks like the lag is over. Sorry about that, everyone. We got lag. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Guy L, who says, "We should just keep hold of the seized Russian funds until Ukraine win and Russia have to pay reparations?" Question mark.
I think that would be a pretty good idea. I think they should not get their assets back that are in the West, though. That's one thing I can certainly back up. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And Doc said, Trister said, "You should be better in 2 days." And hopefully so. It feels like maybe it's one of those little short-lived things, maybe, hopefully. But definitely having some issues here with the cough. But anyways, moving on to our next question, we have one from Joe Taylor, who says, "If NATO won't take preemptive measures to stop ZNPP from meltdown or explosion, should USA step up, and what could we do?"
We could try and do a couple of things. We could get directly involved militarily, or we could create a diplomatic scene. Those are really the only two options we have as far as the ZNPP goes. Honestly, I would go with military intervention, because creating a diplomatic scene we've done before, and that doesn't really appear to have gotten us anywhere. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Knight, who says, "What do you think history will say about Bakhmut? A waste of our lives or a necessary battle?"
The Battle of Bakhmut will be viewed in the future very similar to the Battle of not Verdun. I'm trying to think of an appropriate battle. It won't be viewed as a Stalingrad, that's for sure. It'll probably be viewed as a Verdun. I would say probably the best one I could come up with as a comparison, considering that the city wasn't. It was a little important as far as the implication behind taking the city, because it was the only thing close to the front lines, and the Ukrainians wanted to inflict as much losses and damage on the Russian forces as possible, although them taking Bakhmut didn't really mean anything or change anything in the long run. So going off of that, I would say it would most likely be viewed as a pointless battle by the Russians, but one that did change the course of the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Now, Matthew, I feel like I'm getting sick over here, and hopefully that's just like the...
Oh, no!
Hopefully that's like the mental syndrome of just hearing you getting sick is making me feel sick. Hopefully that's the case. Hopefully I'm not legitimately getting sick. But with that, we are on...
No, if you were getting what I've got, you would have really bad... I'm not actually shaking right now because I'm so cold. And I definitely got a fever right now, so you probably don't have what I have if you're not doing that.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and I hate to say it, Enforcer, but I think we're going to have to limit it to 3 more questions because I'm going to have to get off here in just a moment. But anyways, our next one goes to Tony Stankard. And thank you, Tony, for the good question. He says, "Is there any scenario outside of nuclear that the U.S. could get involved in this war?"
Yes, we could get involved conventionally. in the war just at any moment. And we could also get involved due to the Novokakovka Dam and the humanitarian crisis that has been caused downstream of that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Guitar Jams, who says, why Ukraine has not been using the JDAM glide bombs. That was supposed to be the game changer.
They may not be using it because they may not have an aircraft that's capable of effectively using them, and that's why they started to talk about the F-16s a good bit, is because they were hoping to get something that could actually use those glide bombs. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is some random jet, who says, if Ukraine takes Crimea, do you think they would deploy anti-ship assets in Crimea?
I think they most likely would deploy anti-ship assets in Crimea. They would probably be trying to pick off the Black Sea Fleet however they could. So I would say yes, they would certainly place some anti-ship assets into the Crimean Peninsula. And so with that, oddly enough, we are rounding out a stream at only 2 hours and 10 minutes long. Probably one of the shortest live streams we've run in a while. Of course, many of y'all know at this point, Matthew's not feeling that great, and hopefully that doesn't spread to me here soon, because I'm going to be pretty busy on our off days here on Monday and Tuesday. But still, I thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I thank every single one of y'all for being here with us tonight as we raised another $6.4 thousand in support of revived soldiers of Ukraine. Y'all have helped out in an amazing way tonight, helping to save the lives of people in Ukraine, soldiers in Ukraine, that have given nearly everything to defend their country and to defend the Western world. And for that, I thank every single one of y'all so much once again for y'all's kindness to those soldiers and showing them that people in the West really do care through y'all's support to that nonprofit. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army.
And good night, LSA, and thank you all for another successful fundraiser. We really do appreciate it a lot, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.